Welcome to Ageless Fury. Randall Cox here. Hey, today we're going to talk about good and bad food additives as well as some good and bad fats. Hey, if this is your first time here, start by subscribing now. Let's get those notifications turned on so that you don't miss anything. Now, as we strive to eat better, sometimes we get into these situations where, we grab something quick and easy right off the shelf, these prepackaged food items, maybe we just gone through, a long day at work or, just dealing with life activities and we need something quick and easy, right? And problem is that these packaged, food items, they come to us disguised as healthy, but I'll tell you right now, they're pretty far from being healthy. Now take a look at that food label. Okay, now that's going to show you those additives. Those are going to be listed as the ingredients. Now, you're going to have, different type of ingredients. They're put in there for, coloring. They're going to add, flavor, texture. Also, a lot of those are in there to preserve the life of that food on the shelf. Now, unfortunately, those additives, look, they may have harmful risks. They're going to have side effects that can be very detrimental to the impact on our health. And of all these, I'll tell you right now, perhaps the most notorious of all, these food additives is an artificial trans fat. Look, this is intended to be used as a substitute for like your butter and your oils. Now, the manufacturers of these food products, right, so it lowers their production costs. It raises their profits, right, because it extends the life of the foods to sit on the shelf until we buy it. We don't need those chemicals. Now, these are often phrased as hydrogenated vegetable oil or a shortening, right? And it's created by, they force that hydrogen gas into the vegetable fat under extremely high pressure. Now, in turn, what happens is, they create trans fatty acid. Now, you're going to find these additives in your margarine, your commercially baked goods, frozen foods, soup, crackers, and quite honestly, just about any type of a processed food. Now, these trans fats, okay, they've been a direct contributor to heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, and inflammation. Now, the trans fats, okay, that's going to raise the body's level of LDL, bad cholesterol. It's going to lower that HDL, good cholesterol, right? So what happens? Well, you've just increased your risk of cardiovascular disease. Look, that LDL cholesterol, right? That's going to clog our arteries, whereas, the reverse on that HDL cholesterol, that's going to give our arteries stability. Now, as we move on to unsaturated and saturated fats. Okay, now typically look at that unsaturated fat. That's going to be the healthier of the two because that unsaturated fat, now that's coming primarily from a plant-based source. So that's going to be, your olives, your nuts, your avocados, your seeds, and it's going to be in certain types of fish as well. Now, in this case, these are high in omega-3s, right? This is what we want in our bodies. It's going to help fight that inflammation. It's going to help the calcium effectiveness in our bones. It's going to improve our immune system as well. Now, unsaturated fats are usually called oils. Now, unlike a saturated fat, now these oils contain mostly monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. Now, that monounsaturated fat, okay, that's going to lower that risk of heart disease, stroke. It's going to lower that blood pressure, okay? It's going to, help prevent the hardening of those arteries and the narrowing of those arteries. It's just, look, this is a good fat for our bodies. Now we get into that polyunsaturated fat. That's going to be found in things like, flax seeds, walnuts, almond, tuna, fish oil. Again, it's going to help, reduce that risk of heart disease. It's going to lower that cholesterol. Again, this is something that our body actually needs, a healthy fat. Now, saturated fats are going to be found in the animal products that we eat. That's going to be, our beef, our pork, and our chicken. Now, you do have some leaner animal products out there, like maybe a chicken breast or a pork loin. They are going to have a little bit lower in levels of saturated fat. Look, high intake saturated fat, again, it's going to increase your risk of heart disease. So that's something that you need to keep in moderation. Look, you should also try and consume a grass-fed over a grain-fed animal. That should reduce that level of fat in that food product. Now, there are also certain oils that we want to stay clear of, right, as much as possible. Now, these are going to be a highly refined oil. They're going to contain an omega-6. Omega-6, highly inflammatory in our bodies. Now, oils like corn, soybean, safflower, sunflower, palm, and canola oil. Okay, now these are causing, heart and cardiovascular disease. They're causing cancer. That's going to elevate our level of cholesterol. So, when you get into these oils, try and stick with your olive oil and your avocado oils as much as possible. Now, your coconut oil, look, it's not the worst out there, but, it's going to be a little bit higher in that saturated fat. Meat. Okay, look, meat has been center stage of a ton of conversations regarding healthy versus unhealthy. And look, there's a ton of studies out there, and they've linked, evidence of health risks, right? By eating high amounts of red meat. Okay, this has been associated with type 2 diabetes, the heart disease, stroke, and certain forms of cancer. Again, this is something that's slowly killing our bodies. Now, again, this is, centered around a high amount of saturated fat in the red meat. So, again, keep it in moderation and you will, reduce that risk of, those cardiovascular and other diseases. Now, in comparison, let's look at a couple different food products out there. Let's take a 6-ounce T-bone steak, 320 calories, 15 grams of fat. Compare that to 3/4 cup of black beans. Okay, you've got 340 calories, 2 grams of fat. Now, when you compare the two, you've got that steak, right? That's going to come at you with 120 milligrams of cholesterol, okay? High amount of saturated fat. Now, in contrast, the beans, look, there's no cholesterol at all. And this has a polyunsaturated fat, a good fat, type of fat that we want, right? Now, steak has no carbohydrates, no fiber. Those beans are going to have 26 grams of a complex carbohydrate, 15 grams of a dietary fiber. The beans are going to have more potassium and less sodium than that steak. And when you look at the iron content of these two foods, it's the same. So clearly, the bean is a much better product than a steak. Look, if you love red meat, it's okay, just keep it in moderation. And if you can squeeze it in, man, I gotta tell you, fit in those black beans as part of your weekly eating program, okay? You will be healthier for doing it. Now, as we get into these oils, okay, you want to look for expeller pressed or cold pressed. Okay, now these oils have been pressed from seeds. They're not refined under a high heat, with the use of chemicals. So some of the oils that I just described, look, if those are expeller pressed, you're going to be in a lot better shape than just, going with, with the old-fashioned type of oils there. Natural flavors. They're bad. They're bad because they're not natural. Okay, all that matters is that they start with something natural. Now, after that, these food labs, they can start adding in these chemicals, and they're simply defined as incidental additives. Now, the food manufacturers, they are not required to disclose to you whether those additives come from a natural or a synthetic source. So I can tell you the bottom line on this one is that there are chemicals being added to your body so that these food manufacturers can reach their financial gains. What happens? Causes you to crave more foods. Okay, and for a lot of us, they're foods that we shouldn't be eating. Msg Monosodium Glutamate. Okay, now this is another flavor enhancer, and you might see it listed as, maybe a monosodium salt or a yeast extract. Okay, this sodium phosphate is a chemical that's used to replace salt, and again, it's something else that's added to help preserve food. Keep it on the shelf longer, so eventually you buy it, and again, the food producers make their money. Now, next we have maltodextrin, or a corn syrup, and starch, right? Now, these have even a higher glycemic index than cane sugar. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to cause our blood sugar to spike. Okay, these highly processed chemicals are, and they're even more dangerous for people that already have type 2 diabetes. Now, grains are another, highly consumed food source, right? That comes with, again, a high level of controversy as with these other foods. So you take these simple grains, right? So these carbohydrates are going to be enriched or bleached flour. Now, they've had all the nutrition stripped from the grain. There's no fiber. They're highly inflammatory, and they are loaded with gluten. Now, because of the high glycemic level, okay, your body breaks down that enriched flour more quickly, okay, raising your blood sugar, okay? Now, this excess blood sugar must be metabolized by the liver. And if there's excess of sugar, what's your body going to do? Well, it's going to store it as fat. So if that period continues, your fat content just continues to escalate. Now, emulsifiers, okay, this is another commonly used, food additive to extend shelf life of food. Plus they're used to, thicken and add texture to our foods. Now, the theory is, these emulsifiers, right, they allow bacteria to move through our gut walls into our bloodstream. Now, when this happens, the body responds with an inflammatory response, to beat that invading bacteria. Now, this inflammatory response can disrupt the body's ability to handle the glucose, okay? And it may be a contributing factor in the development of type 2 diabetes and definitely with obesity. Now, you'll see this listed on a label as carrageenan, okay? Now, these are a gum-labeled emulsifier, and you're going to find these in, your salad dressings, your mayonnaise, ice cream, yogurt, pudding, cheese. I mean, and again, a ton of other, prepackaged, processed food items that are quick and easy to grab off the shelf. Now, maybe the worst food, additive that we can put in our bodies, sugar, okay? Because when you eat excess sugar, okay, that extra insulin in your body, enters through that bloodstream, and look, it can affect arteries, all over your entire body, right? So it causes those artery walls to get inflamed. They're going to harden. What's it going to do? Well, it's going to lead to heart disease and a stroke. Now, the second thing about sugar is, look, it doesn't fill you up, okay? It's not going to satisfy your appetite, and that excess sugar consumption, look, it's going to spike your blood sugar out of the normal range. It's going to set off a cascade of insulin ups and downs. What's going to happen there is, it's going to make you more hungry. It's going to make you crave more food. Sugar is evil. We don't want evil. So this is a huge red flag when overeating. And I talk about, not coloring outside the lines. Okay, sugar is definitely, coloring outside the lines because it's ugly. And we want pretty. We got to stay within those lines. So, we just can't go down that path. When you look at the recommended, sugar consumption on a daily basis, for men it's 36 grams, for women it's 25. You take a 12-ounce bottle of Coke, there are 33 grams of sugar in that one bottle. So how easy is it to go over your sugar allotment for the day? Hey, look, it's not that difficult to do. Now, sugar substitutes, you've got, that high fructose corn syrup. You've got aspartame, sucralose, you've got dextrose, you've got saccharin. Now, those are going to be found in things like, Sweet and Low, Splenda, NutraSweet, and Equal. Now, these are even worse than cane sugar because these are chemicals, right? And these chemicals are being linked to causing certain forms of cancer in our bodies. Look, and of course, if you're trying to lose weight, the last thing you need is an increased food craving, right? What's that do? Well, it's going to lead to overeating. What's that do? Well, it's going to lead to more weight gain. Now, it's understood that, look, almost everything we eat has sugar in it. Typical grocery store, you're probably looking at 70% of every product on a shelf is going to have added sugar in it. This is why reading those food labels is so important. You've got to compare those labels to the different products that you're looking at buying. Okay, this is going to help you make better choices. For cooking, you've got the stevia, that's pretty good. You've got your monk fruit. Now, there's no sugar in pure monk fruit, okay, which means that, consuming a monk fruit, look, that's not going to spike your blood sugar. Now, lastly, I want to talk about GMO, genetically modified organisms. Okay, now you have something where the DNA of that plant or animal has been altered in a way that does not occur naturally. So the plant seeds are modified, right, to resist pesticides. So farmers can spray weed killer. Okay, yes, it does kill the weeds, but not the plant. The problem you have is that plant absorbs the weed killer. The plant is then harvested, and then we eat that plant. Now, this holds true for farm animals as well, because you've got the cows, the chickens, and the pigs. They're eating these GMO plants, right? And then we eat them. So, you know, it's a vicious circle here. So we do try and combat that by buying the USDA, approved organic, the non-GMO verified products. Now, keep in mind that organic products are always non-GMO. Try to stick to that 100%, grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised. You want to look for the, the whole grain products, the organic sprouted, and look for high fiber foods. Now, look, these products still have pesticides in them, but, hopefully it's going to be less than 10%. When you compare that to a GMO product, which is going to be at 40%. Okay, so big difference here. Again, look, we're trying to reduce the amount of harmful chemicals that we're putting into our bodies. Trust me, every little bit helps. Hey, please leave your comments as I work with people on their quest for better health. And if you're looking for more programs that can help you out with that weight loss, nutrition, and your exercise goals, please follow me on YouTube and Instagram. Thank you.